Hi, I'm Parni Jaggi, and this is going to be a continuation of the tragedy King Lear by William Wordsworth. In the last act, we saw how Gloucester was tortured by his own son and both his eyes were taken out, and how Lear has to face that stormy forest and he's saved by Kent and he's given a shelter. And in Act 4, Scene 1, we see that there is this still disguised Edgar as poor Tom. He comes across his blinded father being led away from his house by an old man who lived on Gloucester's land, and he's horrified to see his father in this state, whose eyes have been taken out. He hears Gloucester tell the old man, "I have no way and therefore want no eyes. I stumbled when I saw," because he has been cheated by his son, and he confesses that he was unfair to his real son Edgar. On hearing that poor Tom is there, Gloucester asks the naked fellow to lead him to the cliffs at Dover. The old man is not convinced that this is a good idea, but Gloucester tells him that it is the time's plague when madmen lead the blind. In the next scene, Goneril arrives home with Edmund, and Oswald tells her that Albany is behaving oddly and smiled at the news of the French invasion. Goneril sends Edmund back to Cornwall but kisses him first and tells him, "To thee a woman's services are due." Now, Albany says the sisters' treatment of their father, Lear, makes them tigers and not daughters because they are behaving very cruelly. Goneril calls her husband milk-livered man and a moral fool. Now, Albany is shocked to hear what Cornwall did to Gloucester and that it was Edmund actually who betrays his own father. Goneril is concerned that Regan will make a move on Edmund now she is a widow. After Goneril has led, Albany declares, "Gloucester, I live to thank you for the love you showed at the king and to revenge thine eyes." In scene 3, we see that Kent is talking to a gentleman in Dover about the letters he sent to Cordelia about her father. The gentleman tells him that Cordelia was very emotional reading the letters, so that her tears and smiles were like sunshine and rain at once. Kent then tells the gentleman that Lear is nearby, but that burning shame detains him from Cordelia. In scene 4, Cordelia is concerned about her father, who's been seen as mad, as a madman. She sends people to search every acre of fields and bring him before her eyes. A messenger comes in to tell her the British powers are marching forward and she should get ready for battle. So things are becoming very grave, very serious, and we see that violence is piling upon. In the next scene, Regan talks about the impending battle with Oswald, who has just brought messages to her from Goneril. She tries to get him to reveal what is in the messages he carries from Goneril to Edmund, saying, "I know you are of her bosom." But Oswald remains loyal to Goneril and tells Regan that "my lady charged my duty in this business." Regan gives him her own message to take to Edmund and tells him that if he meets that blind traitor Gloucester, preferment falls on him that cuts him off. Then in the next scene, Edgar has led his blinded father to Dover, still pretending to be poor Tom, although Gloucester recognizes that his guide's voice is altered. Despite Gloucester also recognizing that the ground is even, Edgar convinces him that they are at the top of a cliff from which so much could be seen. So Gloucester sends his guide away with another purse. Now, when Gloucester falls forward, he believes he is throwing himself from a cliff top. So Edgar confesses that his plan may rob the treasury of life and rushes to his father to check if he is still alive. Now, at this moment, King Lear joins them, and he behaves very oddly, ranting about his daughters. And then Lear finally admits, "I know you well enough. Your name is Gloucester," before running off, chased by 3 gentlemen sent to calm him down and take him to Cordelia. Edgar learns from one of the gentlemen that the opposing army are near very near and they are speedily approaching. Then Edgar reads aloud the letter from Goneril to Edmund, which asks Edmund to take one of the opportunities he will have to kill Albany so that he can marry Goneril. Edgar disposes of Oswald's body and then leads his father away. Now, in Act 4, Scene 7, we see that Cordelia asks Kent, "How shall I live and work to match thy goodness?" Because Kent is the only good character from beginning to end who is serving the king with all his loyalty, and he asks her not to reveal his identity till he is ready. A doctor tells Cordelia that the king sleeps still and asks if they can wake him. Lear is brought in, and Cordelia kisses him, judging her sisters by saying, "Had you not been their father?" He calls himself a very foolish old man. He recognizes Cordelia and tells her, "Your sisters have, as I do remember, done me wrong. You have some cause, they have not." The doctor reassures Cordelia, saying, "Be comforted, good madam. The great rage you see is guilt in him." Now, when we look at Act 5, now things speed up. Edmund has command of Regan's troops now that Cornwall is dead. Regan questions him about his relationship with his sister, and Edmund insists his only love for Goneril is in honored love. Goneril and Albany arrive, and Goneril convinces everyone to be together against the enemy. So as others leave, Edgar stops Albany and gives him a letter saying that if you have victory, let the trumpet sound. Then there is a soliloquy, and in scene 2 of this act, as the battle rages, there is a fierce battle. Edgar lets Gloucester rest. He soon returns with the news that King Lear has lost, he and his daughter taken. Gloucester wants to stay where he is, saying a man may rot even here, but Edgar leads him away. In scene 3, Edmund calls for his officers to lock up Lear and Cordelia. She tells her father, "We are not the first who with best meaning have incurred the worst." And he tells her that they would live together in prison. So now both of them, the father and daughter, are together. Edmund secretly sends his captain after them with a note to ensure that they are both put to death. Albany enters, followed by Regan and Goneril, who argue over Edmund's position. So Regan announces her intention to make Edmund her lord and master. She also begins to feel ill because Goneril admits to the audience that she has already poisoned her sister, Regan. Albany has Edmund arrested for treason and calls Goneril a serpent for her betrayal in promising to marry Edmund if he kills her husband. A trumpet sounds and Edgar steps forward in armor which is actually hiding his face. Edgar publicly accuses Edmund of being a traitor. Edmund and Edgar fight, and Edmund is defeated. Now Edgar reveals who he really is and how he disguised himself as a poor Tom and looked after his blinded father. Now Kent arrives dressed as himself again, and Albany orders the bodies to be brought in, and Edmund says, "Yet Edmund was beloved." So there are orders to hang Cordelia, and Albany quickly dispatches men to try and save her. Lear then enters, carrying the dead body of Cordelia, crying, "Howl, howl, howl." Kent tries to tell Lear who he is and that his older daughters have fordone themselves and they desperately are dead. But Albany tells him that Lear knows not what he says, and vain is it that we present us to him. Lear also dies at this point, and Kent wonders how he hath endured so long, so much. Albany and Edgar are left with a kingdom to rule and to consider how they can speak what they feel, not what we ought to say. So the entire play ends in a holocaust of murders and melodramas and treasons and cheatings and betrayals. So, this is how all the characters, the king, all the three daughters, all die, leaving behind a kingdom to rule with Albany and Edgar. So, this was the plot overview of King Lear, the Great Tragedy by Shakespeare. Thank you for now.